Andy Warhol said everybody in the future will be famous for 15 minutes. And I wanted my 15 minutes of fame.
This is Raymond Scott. For 2 years, he's been at the centre of an international mystery involving a stolen literary treasure worth millions.
I have been charged with the theft or the handling of the Shakespeare First Folio.
This book is considered the most important in the English language, and 12 years ago, a unique copy was stolen from a British university.
The book belongs to Durham University Library. The contents belong to the world.
When it resurfaced, it sparked a transatlantic investigation involving the FBI and British detectives.
They thought initially they were dealing with an international art thief, and they were trying to trace Raymond Scott.
But who exactly is the mysterious Mr. Scott?
He drinks champagne, he smokes Cuban cigars. He wants people to think that he's a millionaire.
From fine wines, fast cars, and glamorous women, Scott had a taste for the high life.
This is a man who thinks he's James Bond.
This is the inside story of how Scott's encounter with the First Folio turned into a drama of Shakespearean proportions.
All the world's a stage.
This extraordinary tale begins here in Washington, D.C., at an unassuming library building in the shadow of Capitol Hill. Preparing for another routine week was Chief Librarian Richard Kukta.
It was Monday morning, June 16th. It was 9:05, my phone rang. I know it was 9:05 because I looked at my watch. I didn't have any appointments that morning. I was surprised to get a call, and surprised that there was a person here to show me a book.
The person at the library's reception that Monday morning was 51-year-old Englishman Raymond Scott.
I took the book in a brown leather briefcase to the Folio Shakespeare Library by yellow taxi. And then I went up the steps and presented myself to the reception and said, I have here an old Shakespeare book, which I think is a Shakespeare book.
He'd definitely gone to the right place. The Folger is a world leader when it comes to knowledge of Shakespeare's works, especially the Bard's historically significant First Folio.
The Folger Shakespeare Library has 79 copies of the First Folio. This is Shakespeare's first complete works, published in 1623. The appraisal values vary according to their condition, according to their completeness. They can go as high as $4 to $6 million apiece. And the books behind me are priceless.
Around 700 copies of this first collected edition of Shakespeare's plays were originally printed. Almost 4 centuries later, and only 231 precious copies are known to still exist. So could Scott's Shakespearean book be a genuine First Folio?
Getting assessments or authentication on rare books is something that we do actually quite frequently. All kinds of things come in.
And on that warm June morning, it wasn't just the book that would prove to be of interest.
I met Mr. Scott at the security desk. Came out to see him, and I was greeted by a gentleman in very tropical gear. I had an oversized t-shirt on and a large fish on the chest, lightweight summer pants, loafers with no socks, and sunglasses which he never removed in the entire time we were together that morning.
To all intents and purposes, Scott was a wealthy, if somewhat eclectically dressed, British businessman seeking advice about an historic book.
I didn't realise, I didn't know what I had, but it just felt interesting and right.
I didn't know what was in the briefcase, and I certainly never imagined that it would be a First Folio. First Folios don't just walk in off the street. These are copies that are prized possessions, and they never come unannounced.
Of the remaining 231 copies of the First Folio, 9 are unaccounted for. Scott claimed to have acquired this particular volume in Cuba, but verifying his story wouldn't be straightforward.
The condition of the book was really a problem. Mr. Scott brought it to us to have the book authenticated, have it the Folger verification that it was indeed a first folio. But I was looking at the book, and it was hard to tell. The book was mutilated.
But I said, well, I had a feeling, some people say that there are certain people with antiques who can touch an antique and sort of feel that it's right. Even if they were blindfolded, they could say that's a forgery and this is the genuine article.
It looked like a first folio, but I asked him that I wanted 48 hours to have my colleagues look at the book to see that we could really be sure that it was a first.
And basically, I left the book with him so that his experts could examine it. And then the following day, Tuesday, in the evening, he telephoned me and said, our initial tests are very encouraging. It appears to be a first folio Shakespeare, hitherto uncatalogued and unrecorded. So I was jubilant. So I opened another bottle of Dom Perignon, special occasion, celebrate.
Scott appeared to have good reason to break out the bubbly. He was adamant he'd discovered a book that's the cornerstone of English literature. A book he could potentially sell for millions. Three of the surviving first folios are kept here in Stratford, just yards from where Shakespeare was born. While not classed as rare, the book's high value is based simply on what's contained inside its fragile leaves.
The first folio has been called the most important book in the English language. And the reason why it justifies that title is the intrinsic value of what's in the book. Because if we didn't have this book, we wouldn't have about half of Shakespeare's plays. And those plays include one of Shakespeare's great comedies, Twelfth Night, the great late play, The Tempest, and arguably one of Shakespeare's greatest tragedies, Macbeth. I think it's certainly the case that Shakespeare wouldn't have the enormous status that it has now, the one who is so much ahead of every other writer who's ever lived, without this book.
It's no surprise then that academics around the world have extensively studied every full stop, sentence and soliloquy contained within the first folios.
This is a book we know very well. No two copies are the same. And this is one of the things that helps us track and trace these books.
Early printing methods resulted in the same work having significant variations between books, which makes every remaining copy of the first folio unique.
It's like having a DNA sample or fingerprints of the book. And the question was, where did the copy come from?
As Scott relaxed in the luxurious surroundings of Washington's five-star Mayflower Hotel, alarm bells were ringing on the other side of town.
I was uneasy from the very beginning. On one hand, Mr. Scott professed ignorance of what the book was. On another hand, when I raised some doubts myself, he was quick to assure me that it was a first folio. In fact, he was too quick to assure me that it was a first folio. So I had a gentleman in front of me who knew perfectly well what he was showing.
Unaware of the Folger's doubts about where the folio had come from, Scott was eager to publicise his remarkable find.
So I said to him, well, I'd like to go to the Washington Post. I suppose it's a bit of an egotistical move. You know, Andy Warhol said everybody in the future will be famous for 15 minutes, and I wanted my 15 minutes of fame for discovering and bringing out of Cuba this cultural icon, this unrecorded first folio Shakespeare.
Mr. Scott announced that that he had just brought the book from Cuba. Well, that's a hard thing to verify.
Scott's fantastic tale had started to arouse suspicion. Could this supposedly new copy actually be one of the missing 9 folios? To confirm his initial doubts about the book's origins, Kuchta drafted in additional expertise from the world's largest library.
It wasn't unusual to get a call from Richard to come over and take a look at a book. We do this on occasion when he needs some outside consultation.